Hello everyone, this is Andresrestart, and today we are going to be talking about a potential 40th anniversary release for the Legend of Zelda series. Next year, 2026 is going to be the 40th anniversary for the Legend of Zelda. The original Legend of Zelda came out for the Nintendo Entertainment System back in 1986. And while we have now seen a pretty clear history and pattern of Nintendo having extensive celebrations for Mario's anniversary in 5-year increments, Zelda hasn't seen the same level of celebration. However, very consistently, Nintendo has had an increased level of celebration for The Legend of Zelda every 5 years compared to other series outside of Mario. So there is some room for optimism that we could see some type of 40th anniversary celebration next year, especially with a live-action Zelda movie coming out the year afterwards. Similar to how Nintendo's using Mario's 40th anniversary to lead into the movie early next year, Nintendo may want to do something very similar for Zelda going into the Zelda movie the year afterwards. And there are rumors of there being 40th anniversary celebrations, of there being announcements regarding the series. So could it be that finally these long-rumored titles, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess HD and The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD, be part of this potential anniversary celebration lineup? It's possible, but there's also plenty of reason to be skeptical. It's a curious case when it comes to these games, and that's what I want to speak more on today. Do you find yourself feeling tired, unable to take a good nap during the day from wherever you may be? Then perhaps you are in need of a soft, comfortable sleep mask that blocks out all light. Fortunately, Sleep, the sponsor for today's video, has just that, a quality sleep mask. This sleep mask has super soft, comfy cushions that cover your eyes and block out all light. It's easy to adjust to different sizes, and it feels great to wear. And it's helped me personally fit in just a bit more rest during my days. So if you're looking to improve your sleep and energy, check out the Sleep mask using the link in the description below with my code SLEEPRESTART. So both these games have been rumored for a very long time to come to Nintendo Switch 1. They've even been rumored to be coming together. We go back over 4 years ago. Andy Robinson, the CEO of Video Games Chronicle, had insisted that he had heard about Wind Waker and Twilight Princess coming to Switch, the HD versions. And at one point he thought it might be coming soon, but he had to retract his statement and simply said that Zelda fans should sit tight, which basically means they're coming sooner or later. But that was back in 2021. We're talking about this in 2025, with just a few months left into the year. But then about 3 years ago, Jeff Grubb had also heard about Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD, and them coming in a double pack. But that never actually happened. Here we are, a few months into the era of Switch 2, clearly Nintendo's winding things down with Switch 1. They've only published 2 titles this year for Switch 1, now there's a few more on the way in Galaxy 1 Plus 2, Prime 4, and Legend ZA, but all they've published up to this point is Donkey Kong Country Returns HD and Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. This lineup is far lesser than any other prior year of Switch 1. It's become very clear, especially with Nintendo advertising Prime 4 and Legend ZA as Switch 2 titles for the most part, and really not harping so much on there being Switch 1 versions, even though there are. It just goes to show that Nintendo clearly is moving away from the Switch 1 era. So, obviously, these rumors of Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD coming in a double pack for Switch 1 have been off. Now, that does not mean they can't still come eventually to Switch 2, and there's even still a chance they could come to Switch 1, I'll speak on that in a moment. And they may even still come in a double pack, but the initial plan that these different insiders or journalists heard about doesn't seem to have panned out the way they had heard. Either A, the rumor was totally false, or plans changed. Which, by the way, plans behind the scenes change all the time with different game companies, especially Nintendo. And further especially for something like a Wind Waker Twilight Princess HD, that are done products. They're not completely new games that fans have been eagerly anticipating an update on. It's not like we haven't been getting consistent Zelda releases. We have. So Nintendo hasn't had as much of a need to put out these games. They could simply be sitting on them and someday, randomly, they may come out. However, people are very skeptical that this is going to happen, not just because it's been so long, but also because As part of the opening day one lineup for Nintendo Switch 2, Nintendo made available the GameCube Classics app for Nintendo Switch Online members, and one of the games on there, to start it off, is The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Now, this is the Wind Waker from Nintendo GameCube, not the remastered version Wind Waker HD that came out for Nintendo Wii U. So there are some pretty significant differences. The overall visual look, the quality of life changes. Wind Waker HD had a substantial amount of enhancements. And so the experiences are not the same, but ultimately they are still The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, and so because of that, many have thought that we're not going to be seeing the Wind Waker HD anytime soon. And I've been inclined to agree with this conclusion. However, there are some things to consider here that have me thinking possibly otherwise. So back in April, when we got all these announcements with the initial Switch 2 Direct, Tim Geddes, friend of the channel from Kinda Funny Games, actually got to ask Nate Bildorf on what's going on with Wind Waker, since Wind Waker was added to NSO, and he was wondering about Wind Waker HD. And Nate said that just because a game is available to play via Nintendo Switch Online's library, doesn't mean the developer won't consider remastering or remaking it. And so here we have, from Nintendo of America's Senior Vice President of Product Development, saying that it can still happen. And thinking it through, it's hard for me to believe that Nintendo wouldn't eventually revisit the Wind Waker in some shape or form. Nintendo likes to revisit a lot of its classics. They're always finding ways to repurpose these games and make a quick buck from them. Just look at Super Mario Galaxy 1+2. We are getting these as the big 40th anniversary release. Now, there are other 40th anniversary announcements, but this is the big one, and both games have been remastered together as one pack, although you can get them separately on the eShop. And what's interesting about this example here is that we had actually already seen Mario Galaxy kind of remastered with Super Mario 3D All-Stars back for the Mario Bros. 35th anniversary. And now we're seeing it again, remastered even more, a little bit more, not a lot more, for the 40th anniversary. So the fact that we've seen Nintendo remaster Super Mario Galaxy twice for the Switch 1, I think there's always a possibility that they can go back to the Wind Waker at some point or another. And in the case of Twilight Princess, they have yet to add that to Nintendo Switch Online, but I imagine they will eventually do that as well. It's a GameCube game, I don't see why they wouldn't. And so ultimately, I don't think we should be assuming that we're going to see the HD versions of these games very soon. I'm going to assume that we're simply going to see the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess added to Nintendo Switch Online GameCube Classics, and that's all it's going to be for some time. Unless they're planning something for the 40th anniversary. We have recently heard from Nash Weedle, someone who has leaked so many things about Nintendo throughout this year, which we've covered before and has been continually getting more and more right, has said that he has heard that there are supposed to be 4 key dates next year having to do with The Legend of Zelda, some mix of announcements and events. Now, what could these 4 announcements be? One of them, I assume, has to do with the Zelda Lego set that's now being reported from a few different places, which is exciting and is apparently an Ocarina of Time Lego set, which gives me more reason to believe in the theorized and also rumored Ocarina of Time remake, which may also play a role into Zelda's 40th anniversary. But if this is getting like a big boy, ambitious remake here, perhaps even reimagined to some extent, and that's going to be one of the big releases for Switch 2 next year, maybe there's room for some other smaller Zelda stuff at some point next year for the 40th anniversary. And the more I think about it, the more this kind of makes sense. Because let's remind ourselves of something here, and I think is actually a very important point to make. Super Mario Galaxy 1+2 is a Switch 1 title. They didn't even showcase the Switch 2 version in the Nintendo Direct. We're still waiting to see the 4K footage. Now, why might Nintendo have done that? Because it's a part of celebrating Mario's 40th anniversary and also building up a lot of excitement and attention for the upcoming Mario movie, which they want to reach a very expanded audience. So having these games come out for both Switch 1 and Switch 2 makes more sense. Now, when considering this idea of this ambitious remake of Ocarina of Time, I think it makes a lot of sense from the perspective of putting out an ambitious Zelda title early on for Switch 2 to really bring in that Zelda fanbase and sell more consoles, And while that may work really well to build up attention and excitement for the Zelda movie, Nintendo may still want to provide something to Switch 1 owners even next year. And what's extra interesting about this, GameCube Classics is a Switch 2 exclusive app. It's not available for Switch 1. So there is no official way to play the Wind Waker on Switch 1, and also there is not going to be any way to play Twilight Princess when Nintendo does eventually add this to GameCube Classics for Switch 1. And so Nintendo may be in a position where it might just make sense to release both these games as part of the 40th anniversary celebrations to excite the fan base that's still interested in Zelda that have yet to move on to Switch 2. And some might think, well, isn't that too much Zelda, an Ocarina of Time ambitious remake, repackaging these remasters of Wind Waker, Twilight Princess? Isn't that too much for 1 year? And in most cases, I would say absolutely. But if Nintendo is going to adopt a similar strategy to how they've been treating Mario with its big anniversary celebrations where they have several announcements, then maybe it makes more sense. If Nashville's hearing about 4 key dates for next year, could one of them have to do with an anniversary compilation or collection that's available for Switch 1 owners, while they have something a little bit more ambitious for Switch 2 owners as well? And of course, through backwards compatibility, you would still have access to Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD on Switch 2, the same way we're getting Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. And perhaps it could even have a simple enhancement where the games are upscaled to 4K. That's certainly possible, and the more and more I think about it, I honestly think it makes a great deal of sense. But of course, we've been waiting for these games for so long, and there are other possibilities to celebrate Zelda throughout the year. Maybe the only major release is this theorized Ocarina of Time remake, which, by the way, is just a theory and also a rumor, not confirmed. It's possible we don't get Ocarina of Time at all, and we get Twilight Princess and Wind Waker as a collection instead, or just one of them, or neither and it's something else. These are all possibilities. Now, some people might be saying, well, Nintendo doesn't celebrate Zelda the same way they celebrate Mario for its anniversaries, and this is absolutely true. Right now, what I'm speculating, because of the movie, because of the success they've seen from the anniversary celebrations, because of the success they've seen with all the cross-promotion between the movies, the parks, and all these different games having to do with Mario, with the Zelda movie on the way, Nintendo may be thinking about doing something very similar. And we already have a pretty good idea that they're planning something to expand with the Universal Park having to do with Zelda, given that we have seen the Zelda series producer at Nintendo Universal looking at some sort of plan that's going on there. And we also have the movie, right? So clearly there's a similar thing going on here as they've done with Mario. So perhaps there is indeed going to be an anniversary event, and this rumor we have from Nash Weedle seems to back that up to some extent. Doesn't mean it's going to be as big, doesn't mean there's going to be a dedicated Zelda anniversary presentation, but there may be several announcements, and that could mean more than one anniversary related game coming out next year. So there's a lot of possibility here. And just thinking about it a little bit more, Super Mario Galaxy 2 was always a head scratcher since the release of 3D All-Stars back for Mario's 35th anniversary in 2020. People were wondering why we didn't see Galaxy 2. And what we had been theorizing for some time is because it would be tied into Yoshi, and Yoshi playing a big role with the Mario movie. And now we know it's the Mario Galaxy movie, which is going to have Yoshi, and Yoshi is a big part of Mario Galaxy 2, and they also even announced a new Yoshi game. So the Yoshi influence, that theory has been confirmed, essentially. And the basic point I'm making with this is that they may have saved Super Mario Galaxy 2 for all these years for this moment, for this period of time. Because it makes so much sense with all the cross-promotion with everything going on with the anniversary and the movie. Maybe Nintendo has also been saving these games for a big year celebrating The Legend of Zelda leading up to a big movie early on the year after. It would explain why we've continually heard about these games, but Nintendo has just sat back and not released them. So from that perspective, maybe we should have even more belief that Nintendo is still sitting on these games and are saving them for a special occasion. Perhaps that occasion indeed is for Zelda's 40th anniversary. It could be part of the anniversary celebration. Or maybe the main part in case they don't have a big major Zelda release ready for next year. Which would be very unfortunate, but when it comes to Zelda projects, the ambitious ones, they do always take longer than we hope. But let's say we don't see Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD for the 40th anniversary next year. At that point, is it time to completely give up on these games? And I would say, for the most part, yes. I would just assume we're getting Twilight Princess eventually added to Switch Online for GameCube Classics, and that is it, eventually at some point during the Switch 2 era. I do think it's also worth noting, though, that by this point, Nintendo has already remastered every single 3D Zelda, including Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, with their Switch 2 editions. What's next are ambitious remakes. And we're theorizing about this Ocarina of Time remake. If it does happen and it is successful, that would then open the door for future remakes. I would assume Majora's Mask would come first, it being a sequel to Ocarina of Time, but then after that, Twilight Princess and the Wind Waker would make a lot of sense. Now, this would be years from now, but someday I do envision us seeing something like that Zelda U tech demo that was an enhanced version of the Twilight Princess art style, except by the time we do see this, it would look substantially better than even that. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget, you can use my code SLEEPRESTART when checking the link in the description below for the Manta Sleep Mask. This is Andresrestart, thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.